Welcome back to another Thoughtful Dots tutorial. Today we are going to be painting on a 4-inch rock. These rocks are from my dad's shop, the Rock Shop Co. on Etsy. And I have painted this one black using Folk Art Multi-Surface Satin in Pure Black. So first I'm going to draw on my guide marks, and typically for rocks, I like to use these Happy Dotting Company ones. I think they're silicone, so they're just bendy, which is good for rocks. But this is a 16 segment, and I want to do a 12 segment, and I don't have a 12 segment in this style. So I'm just gonna use these ones that I got from Amazon. They're a little bit harder to do on the rock surface, but it'll work. So I'm just putting it right over the center. These have the center marked. And actually, so it's a little bit raised. I like to pick it off with my nail just so that when we do the center dot over it, it's not having a bump. So putting the stencil over the center. So this has the circular guide marks, but it's just so hard to use this. So I'm going to use a compass. And let me see if these are measured distance-wise. So just for sake of keeping everything the same, I'm just going to mark, I'm putting it on the center and then marking 1, 2 lines, and I can measure those just in case you don't have that stencil. So those are about a 1/2 inch apart. And then I'll use my compass. This might get a little blurry just because it's so close to the camera. Sorry about that. So I'm putting it on the center and then putting the pencil on that first line. And then we'll put it on the second line. So those are about a 1/2 inch apart, and then I'm gonna go back and go in the middle. And then I'm just gonna eyeball it and try to do about the same distance to give me one more. And those are the guide marks. Okay, we are going to be doing a little bit of custom color mixing today. I feel like learning how to mix colors is a really good skill to have. Really, so that you're not having to go out and buy a bunch of different paints. You can learn to make your own colors. So I'm using these paint pots. I know we're only painting a 4-inch rock, so you can totally just use a paint palette, but I'm using the pots just because I have a feeling that I'm really going to like this palette, and we'll probably want to use it on other projects. So I'm using the pots to preserve the paint. I get these at Hobby Lobby. So these are the colors I have: Purple Rain, Calypso Blue, Eucalyptus Leaf. And then we are going to be using Zinc, which is a dark gray color, to custom mix our colors because I want these to be a little bit more moody, so just tone down a bit. So that's what we're going to use the zinc for. So you just need some type of dark gray. You could even use black. I just don't really want to go that dark, I don't think. So we'll just start with this. Of course, the colors I picked are not opened. I use my teeth to open these. Okay, so let's think. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Green, blue, purple. So I usually try to go in like the rainbow order when I'm doing a gradient. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So green, blue, purple. So I'm going to start with green. And then I also have to decide how many colors I want. It's a small rock, so I don't think we can fit too many colors. Green, blue. So I'm just gonna go, so that's the eucalyptus leaf. Now we're doing Calypso Blue. And then I want a middle color that is blue and purple. So Purple Rain. And then one that's just Purple Rain. So we will start with that and see how it looks. Oh my gosh, I'm just knocking everything over. So I'm just grabbing a mixing brush. I've had this old mixing brush forever. And we are just going to mix these up and see how they look. So that is a good in-between color, but I think I want it to be just a little bit more purple. So this is our base that we're starting with. And now I'm gonna grab the zinc. I'm going to add a pretty good amount. Just kind of eyeballing it into each one. And then we will just see how they look and then adjust from there. So as I'm doing the color mixing, when we go in like a rainbow order, green, blue, purple, the colors actually naturally transition into the next. So the green, instead of cleaning our brush off, we are just gonna go straight into the blue, taking a little bit of that green. This also will give us a nice gradient and make the colors very cohesive. Also adding the zinc into each color also makes the palette more cohesive. So then we just have to decide how toned down we want these colors. Because if you don't add the zinc, then they'll be more vibrant. But if we add more zinc, then they will be more toned down. I also just don't have enough purple in this last pot, so I need to add more regardless. So I like these. You could leave it like this if you want a little bit more vibrant, but I actually just really want this palette to be very muted, so I'm gonna do more. And then when we go from the last color back to the green, we do want to wash the brush off of it because we don't want purple to go into the green. So this is customizable if you want it more vibrant. You don't have to add any zinc if you don't want. But I really just want it to have like more of a darker, moody, not super vibrant vibe. So I chose to add more zinc. Custom color mixing can take a while to get everything blended. All right, those are nice and toned down, still cohesive, really pretty. And then using the rhinestones with this palette, I think I'm gonna use purple and blues on the floor. But these will be like a little bit more vibrant and add a nice pop of color and shimmer. So these are the ones I will be using. I sell these on my Etsy shop. I will link everything in the description below, but yeah, I'll be using purple and blue. And if you don't have rhinestones, that's totally fine. You can actually, if you have oval tool, you could use an oval tool instead of a rhinestone. So let's see, the size 5 will be about the same size as the rhinestones. So if you don't have rhinestones, you can use an oval tool in the size 5. These are from .Art Depot. Or you can use a paintbrush to paint on a diamond shape, or use a stylus tool to do a little diamond shape. But these are, I think, 7 by 15 millimeter, or yeah, millimeters. I was questioning myself for a second. So yeah, those are some options, but I will be using the rhinestones. And, oh, as an accent color, I'm going to be using the Nuvo drops. These are the Dream Drops, and this is Fairy Wings. It's a really pretty iridescent light pink color, which I think will be really beautiful with this palette. If you don't have the Fairy Wings, you could use Nuvo Drop and Ivory Seashell, which is like the pearl. You could even do copper, would be pretty with this. Gold would be good with this. And if you don't have Nuvo Drops at all, you can just use regular paint. So you could use a white pearl paint, you could just use gold. But usually when I'm making my palettes, I have my colors, my paint colors, and then some type of metallic accent. So in this case, I will be using the Dream Drops. So substitute with whatever you have available. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this Fairy Wings in here, because I'm going to use this for my center dot. So if you're not using Fairy Wings, just use whichever metallic paint that you chose, whether it be gold, pearl, whatever you're using as your accent color. And what size? Let's do, I don't want it to be too big. Maybe the 12.5. I'm gonna do the 12.5 rod and that Fairy Wings. The Fairy Wings is really thick, so sometimes it's hard to get a nice circle, but I'm gonna do my best. And then I'm gonna add, I'm getting more paint, and I'm just gonna kind of hover over, you know, that's not centered. You can see it's way more that direction. So I'm gonna fix it because that will throw off the whole thing. Yeah, that was way off. You can see the center there. My bad. So the center dot is important because everything else builds off of it. So if it's not centered, then the whole painting will be off-centered. Okay, let's try that again. I don't know why that was so off. So I'm just hovering over the top. I'm not touching it all the way down. That was a little better. There's still a little bubble that popped out the side there, so I'm just taking my Q-tip and I'm gonna just flatten that out a bit, and then I'm going to take a stylus tool. I can also feel the bump in the center, so I feel like that is at least more centered than it was before. So I'm just swirling this out just because I like how it looks. Especially with the metallic. I had a little bubble pop out over here too, so I'm just trying to make it more circular. Still doesn't feel totally centered, but it still wasn't centered, so I wiped it up and did it again. Third time's a charm. So we are good to go now. So next I am grabbing my Thoughtful Dots stylus tools. And what do we want to start with? So this is a smaller rock, so I might actually go bigger this time. I don't want to do a lot of rings of dots just because we don't have a lot of space, so I want more room for our pattern. So let's do the 1.5. So we're just dipping into the paint each time. I know you can't see the paint off the screen, but I'm just dotting and then dipping back into the paint. Just doing our best to get them to be all the same size. And I'm loading a pretty good amount of paint on my tools so that these are big. So as we get to the end, I think I can fit about 3. That first one that I did is a lot smaller, so I'm just going to add a little bit to that to make it bigger. It's not perfect, but it's okay. And then once that dries, I'll probably do some little micro dots in there. But we are going to add some rhinestones. I'm going to start with the purple. So when doing stones, it's really hard to outline the shape of the rhinestones. You don't want to glue them on right now because we still need to varnish this. So you need a way to temporarily have a placeholder for the rhinestones. So you either need to outline them with a pencil, or what I'm going to do is use this Gorilla Glue mounting putty. This is linked in my Amazon shop, but I just take little pieces and roll them up and then put them on the back of my rhinestone. Just a tiny little bit. And then I can temporarily place the rhinestones, and we'll paint around the rhinestones, and then at the end we'll take them off and varnish and then glue them on. So I'm placing my rhinestones on every other vertical guide mark. Couple more. All right, now we have our rhinestones. I'm going to take my accent color, the fairy wings, and the 1.5 stylus. And I'm going to make a dot at the tip of our rhinestone, right on that vertical guide mark. And then I'm dipping it in the paint again. And then I'm going to walk the dots down. So we're pretty much just outlining the rhinestones. So make a dot. And then walk the dots down. The fairy wings is very thick and sticky, so it's a little bit tricky to work with. But it's very pretty. So sticky. There we go. Okay, now we have our walking the dots. And next we are going to use a brush. I am going to use, I'm gonna start with the 2/0 brush, and if that's too thick, I'll go to the 3/0, but I'm using the Thoughtful Dots brushes, rigger brushes. And I'm gonna kind of go in the gradient. So next I'm gonna go to blue, the blue color. And I don't want these to be super thick, so I don't want to add a lot of paint. And I'm going to reach these a little bit longer so they come up to this guide mark right here. Also, when you're doing patterns, you want to make sure that your brush stroke stays on the right side of the vertical guide mark. You just want to keep this petal between this vertical guide mark and this vertical guide mark. So when I'm doing my brush stroke right here, that vertical guide mark is my boundary. So I want to stay on this side of it, and that will help make sure that we have enough room. And then just make sure all of your brush strokes end on the same circular guide mark. I always try to get my brush strokes in between as close to one another without touching, because I don't like when they touch and run together here. I like to have a little bit of a gap. So if you're having a hard time with that, if they're too thick, you might want to use a thinner brush. That might help. Beautiful. Okay, and then I want to do another rhinestone. So I'm taking the blue. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the putty. And this is reusable, so when you pick it off, you can just keep it in a little ball and reuse it. So when I place these, let's see. So our brush strokes end at this guide mark. So I'm gonna go up one guide mark, and that's where I want the tip of my rhinestone to be. I am almost always making sourdough. So right now, just a few minutes ago, I took a break from recording and went downstairs to do my stretch and folds. So I try to clean my nails good, but sometimes I just get dough on my fingers. So if you ever see that, that's what it is. Oop. That one came off. I've had short nails for a while and I just did my longer nails a few days ago, and it's harder to use the rhinestones with longer nails. One more. So we're just lining these up on that vertical guide mark and then making sure the tips are all at the same guide mark all the way around. And then I'm taking my pink tool, the 1.5, and we're going to do the same thing that we did before. So dot, and then walk the dots along. Dot, and we're using the accent color again, so same as before. So I actually had imagined this palette being more purple, but right now it has a lot of the green and blue. So on this next pattern, I want to make sure I get a lot of that purple in there. That is just really sticky and not giving me nice circles. Okay, now we have all of our outlines. I'm just wiping off my tool and getting a sip of coffee. The nearest Starbucks to us is an hour away in Moab, and we just drove through there on the way home today. So I got to get my Starbucks. All right. So we're going to use a brush again. I'm going to use a 2/0. So whenever doing brush strokes like this, I like to, there's a little gnat in here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Sorry, it's annoying. To do a little practice. Hold on, I have to kill this thing. think I got it. 1, 2, probably only 3 brush strokes I can fit right there. So then I have to figure out what colors I want to do. So we already have the blue. So if I have to only pick 3 colors, what I want to do is start with the green, and then I'll go to this color and this color, and I think that will give us enough purple. So I'm starting with the green and the 2/0 brush. And these are kind of tricky because they're on a curve, so maybe let me do one first. And I'll show you. So these reach down and they kind of start a little bit straight and then curve around. So they're kind of, these are just like higher, they are reaching. It's the only way I can describe those ones, but I use them a lot. So they're just starting above and then curving down along. And that one, I might have had too much paint. It's kind of, I don't want them to drip because they're on that curve. So pushing to make it thick and then letting up on the pressure to come along. Ooh, these are tricky. So we'll just slow it down a bit. Rinsing off my brush. So we're gonna skip the blue color and go to the kind of indigo or periwinkle. I'm gonna use that same 2/0 brush. And these ones are going to be shorter. And then that little gap leaves us enough room for one more brush stroke after this one. Brush strokes are tricky on a curved rock like this. Take some practice for sure. Rinsing off my brush. And then the last one, we're gonna do the purple. And if these are pretty wet and if you find that they're running together, just let your previous brush stroke dry a little bit before going on to the next one. So I'm now doing the purple color, same brush. And these ones are going to be shorter again. There's that dang gnat. Sorry. So I'm starting at this circular guide mark, and it fits perfectly into that gap there. And I want these to be close to one another right here, but again, leaving a gap so that they aren't touching. Pushing to make it nice and thick, and then letting up on the pressure so it comes to a point. And that gives us more of the purple color to tie it all in. So pretty. And then once this all dries, I'm gonna go in and do some metallic details with the fairy wings. And now I'm going to do a 3 swoosh pattern, my favorite, right in between here. This will be hard to see, but let me do one. So basically doing a large dot, and then using my micro dotting tool to drag up into a swoosh. So I'm kind of bending down to get more eye level so that I can see this curve. So that is what we're doing right in between. So you can't see me, but I am leaning down to get more eye level so I can see that curve. Because it's kind of tricky. Okay, and then I just love this fairy wings color so much. I'm going to, let me do this first and then I can show you, but pretty much using my Nuvo to make some dots, just going right along the edge. like that. So starting at the big swoosh and then just making some dots all the way over until you hit that green brush stroke. And you can play around with the sizing of these, but I'm able to fit about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. Very cute. I think I can fit one more little swoosh. Let me think about what color. Let's do the blue since we didn't use the blue in the last pattern. And I'm just going to do a little swoosh from the short. Eek. It's so hard to show you now. So basically, I want to be really careful. Starting from this swoosh, we're just doing a little swoosh right in that gap. Or you can skip it and just leave it blank. It will look good either way. I just figured we can squeeze a little bit more of that blue in. All right, now I'm going to use probably my micro dotting tool and the fairy wings. And I'm going to micro dot in between each dot on that row of dots we made. Pretty. I just noticed that my center is cracking a little bit. So once that dries, I will probably go over that again with another layer. And then I'm gonna let this dry and we'll come back and finish off with a little bit of metallic top accents. All right, I've given this a little bit of time to dry. So now I want to top dot my center because it kind of got a little funky. So I'm putting more dream drops in this pot, and then I'm going to do some top brush strokes. So I'm just going to So interesting thing, I had my fan in my room going, which I normally don't. I think I just hit the switch by accident, so the fan was going, and I think that's what caused the center to crack a little bit. Sometimes if paint dries too quickly, it can crack like that. Okay, and now I'm going to take that same 2/0 brush we were using and my accent color, my fairy wings. And I'm getting a little bit on the brush. It's a little bit tricky because this is thick. And I am going to do a top brush stroke. And you don't want these to be too thick. You don't want to cover your previous brush stroke. You just want to have a metallic highlight going through the center of it. So just looking at the top highlight here compared to not having it, you can see how much it just makes everything pop. So pretty. So we could just leave it like that. I kind of want to see what a little bit of a highlight looks like on that blue, but it's so small that I'm going to go down to a thinner brush, so the 3/0, and just get a little tiny bit of paint on here. So these don't need to go all the way up to the tip. It's just kind of at the base until it runs out. So pretty. That just really brightened it all up. And then these green ones for me kind of cracked, I think again because my fan was on. So they got little cracks. So I am going to do a top brushstroke over the green just to kind of cover up some of the cracks there. That just kind of helped hide it a little bit. So I'm just doing right at the tip of the green. So pretty. Okay, I love this. Let me see if I can look at all that sparkle. I'm actually going to take this over in the sun so that you can see this fairy wings in the sun. But before I do that, I'm going to let this completely dry and then use a wet wipe to wipe off the guide marks, and then I'm going to varnish using triple thick. And someone asked last time what brush I use. This is the brush that I use for my base on rocks, my base paint, and the glaze on my rocks. So I'll use the triple thick. It makes it nice and glossy. So I was editing this video and I realized, I think I mentioned it earlier, but to finish this, because we have the rhinestones on here with the putty, we want to let this completely dry and then take off the rhinestones. I just use tweezers and then pull off the putty and then varnish. And then once the varnish is dried, then you can glue on the rhinestones. And I use this Gorilla Glue Super Gel to glue them on. So yeah, let it completely dry, take the rhinestones off, wipe up the guide marks, varnish, and then glue on, and then it's finished. So I just want to show you how pretty, sparkly, in the sunshine. Gorgeous. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial. We'll see you next time.